So today we're going to talk about how to solve quadratic equations with perfect squares. Okay. So this doesn't cover every quadratic equation, but it does cover special types. This type is going to have a perfect square. Okay. Quadratic equation with perfect square. So first of all, what's a quadratic equation? These are equations with x to the what power? No, first x to the first power is the linear equation. Remember, it gives you a line. Yeah, x to the second power. Okay. Oops. Well, linear function gives you a line, right? But linear equation with x to the first power, x to the second power, the quadratic equation, you get something like x to the second ax squared plus bx plus c equals some number 0. Okay. What are perfect squares? Yeah, give me an example of a perfect square. Yeah. 4 is a perfect square. That's 2 to the second power, right? What else? Yeah. 25, that's 5 to the second. So, like I have a bunch. 3 to the second, 4 to the second power, x. What about x to the second power? Is that a perfect square? Yeah, it turns out anything to the second power. Like the whole thing, so like here. 2x plus 7 to the second power. Is that a perfect square? Yeah. What about something square? Okay, so you could put anything in there, right? As long as the whole thing is being squared, that's a perfect square, isn't it? Right? So you have an equation with perfect square, okay? You're going to have a quadratic equation with perfect squares, and we're going to show you how to solve these, okay? So let's do some examples, okay? So let's take a look at a very simple quadratic equation with perfect square. Where's my perfect square? X squared. 4 happens to be a perfect square also. Well, yeah, 4 is also a perfect square, but in this, we're going to look at the one with the variable being square. Okay, so that's perfect square, x squared. Yeah, so how do we solve for x? If I ask you to solve this, so that's what we're going to learn. Before we do anything like that, you guys remember from last time, whenever you have an equation that is not a linear equation, how do we solve equation that is not linear? You have to make it equal to 0. You guys remember that? So how do we make this equation equal to 0? Subtract 4 from both sides. You guys remember this? Of course, if it's a linear equation, you know how to solve. It's very simple. But if it's not a linear equation, we got to make it equal to 0 and hope to do what on the left side? Hope to factor. Do we know how to factor x squared minus 4, guys? Yeah, it's a difference of 2 squared. So we get x plus 2 times x minus 2. And what property are we using to then solve? In other words, how do I know which values of x we need for this to equal to 0? It's called, remember, zero product property. So we want, right, a product to equal to 0, right, for these equations that are not linear. Because once we could do that, it's easy to see what solutions, right? It's easy to see the solutions. Because when the product equals to 0, each of these factors must equal to. When is this true? Actually, so we have 2 factors on the left side, right? You guys remember what zero product property says? If you have a product equals to 0, like if a times b equals 0, either a has to be equal to 0 or b has to equal to 0. So in this case, what's your a? X plus 2. What's your b? X minus 2. So when is this true? When x plus 2 is equal to 0, or this is true if, you guys remember this? This is true if what? X plus 2 equals 0 or x minus 2 equals 0. You guys remember this? Yeah. Right? Remember, if each of these factors is 0, 0 times anything is 0. You guys remember that? So that's how we do it. So what do we get? When we have x plus 2 equals 0, we get, yes?
X equals 2 or x equals negative?
Yeah, so the first one we get negative 2. The other one we get 2. Because you subtract 2 from both sides. The other you add 2 to both sides. So you get 2 solutions. You guys remember? And this makes sense because, again, there are 2 ways of writing this. You could write x equals negative 2 or x equals 2, or use the set notation, raised, okay? Negative 2, comma 2. Does that make sense? And this makes sense, doesn't it? Look at the equation that we had. X squared is equal to 4. What numbers can you plug in for x? So that when you square it, it becomes 4. 2, right? But is that the only solution? There's another one. What? Negative 2 also, because what's negative times negative? Positive. So negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And positive 2 times positive 2 is, of course, 4. You see? So please make sure that we get 2 solutions, right? Okay, so if you just write one, would you get this right on the test? No, then you haven't given me all solutions. there are two solutions for this quadratic equation. Okay, there are two numbers that you can make it equal to 0, and it will be 4, right? Chris, what's your question again? Yeah, we could have actually square rooted both sides. That's a shortcut. So people did this many times, and they go, wait a minute. They saw some pattern, and they said, wait, if you have a perfect square equals to some real number, right? Even though this is the correct way to do it, algebraic way to do it, they found a shortcut. All you have to do is take so there's a shortcut. It has to take the square root both sides, like this. But when you square root both sides, guess what? How many solutions do you get? 2. So guess what? You have to put plus or minus, positive or negative. If you don't put positive or negative, guess what? How many solutions would you get? Only 1. Does that make sense? So if you're going to take this shortcut, right? This is a shortcut of, this is the correct way of doing it algebraically, okay? But if you're going to take the shortcut, you have to remember that you get 2 solutions. There are 2 possible ways for this to be true, right? Because, you know, as you saw, right, negative 2 times negative 2 still gives you 4, not just positive 2 times positive 2. Does that make sense? So please note that, okay? And it has to be in this form. Okay, write this down. Must be in this form. Which form? You have to have a perfect square equal to some real number, okay? What do I mean by real number? Any number on a number line. Any real number. Okay, so if you have a perfect square equals to a real number, you could use this shortcut. What if you don't have this form? Can you use this shortcut? No. Okay. So it only works for this sort of simple ones where you have a perfect square, like x squared equals to some number, like this time it was 4. It could be any number you like. Okay. But yes.
Also, then it could be just 4 equals just x.
I'm sorry?
It could be just 4 equals just x, not squared.
4 equals to
If
x.
it's just x equals 4, can we use this?
Could we use this? Okay, if I have x equals to 4, can I square root both sides? No. Is x a perfect square? No. So it doesn't fit this form.
Oh, so then
You have to have a perfect square equals to some number. Okay? And it turns out this real number has to be certain real numbers. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so may I move on to this? Okay. So actually write this down. So when you square root both sides, you have to remember to put plus or minus because there are 2 solutions, right, that you get. Okay, so this is a shortcut, but you just have to remember to put positive or negative in front of the square root when you square root both sides, okay? So I have a question. Do we always get 2 solutions when we solve quadratic equations? Okay, I want you to discuss with your group. Do we always get 2 solutions when we solve a quadratic equation? Okay, well, go ahead, everybody think about it. I'll wait. Because last time we did, right? We got negative 2 and positive 2. What do you guys think? Okay, think about it. All right, so how many people say yes, we always get 2 solutions when you solve a quadratic equation? Okay, how many people say no? Okay, a lot of you. You guys are correct. The answer is no. The reason is because when you square... Okay, why did you guys say no? Those of you said no. Yes. Well, 2 people see it. Okay. 3, 4. Libby, what do you think?
Because if the quadratic equation has a denominator, then if the solution comes out, if one of the solutions is the denominator.
Oh, okay. So if you have a restriction and so forth. Yeah, kind of. But that's not quite... Michael, did you want to add something to that?
Maybe if it was like 0, you have to put positive.
Okay, if you have x squared is equal to 0, how many solutions would you get?
0.
Well, you square root both sides, right? What's the positive or negative of 0? 0. So if you have if you have a perfect square equals to 0, your solution is 0. There's only one solution, right? Yes?
You might factor out another. So let's, if it was like x, let's say it's x cubed plus x squared plus x, then you might just take out the x, then you have, and if you simplify, then you have 3 factors equal 0.
Not quite. Okay, so let's take a look at, there are 2 solutions, okay, or you could have 1 solution, right? The last choice will be no solution is correct. When would you get no real solution? I wrote down no real solution. I mean, it's obvious we're always talking about real numbers, but we're going to write this for now. Why do you think, okay, when do you think we get no solution? When you have a perfect square equals to what?
Negative.
Negative is correct. When you have perfect square equals to negative, you get no solution. Why? For example, x squared is equal to negative 4. How come we get no solution for that? Tajwar.
Because it's not possible to have a square root for negative numbers.
Exactly. Why not? Why can you not have square root of a negative number?
If you multiply any two same numbers, it's always positive.
Exactly. Whenever you multiply any two same numbers, it will always be positive. It will never be negative because, think about it. What's positive times positive? What's negative times negative? So can you multiply same two numbers, right, to get it equal to negative? No, that's not possible. What if one of them is positive, the other is negative?
No.
Then you get negative, but are we multiplying the same numbers then? Are we squaring the same number? No, we're not, right? Does that make sense? So when you are squaring a number, you're multiplying the same two numbers together, correct? So it turns out when you have x squared is equal to positive real number, then you get two solutions. When you have x squared is equal to 0, then you only get one solution. And when you have x squared is equal to negative number, you get no solution. No real solution. We've been talking about real numbers all this time, but why do I need to include real numbers? You learned this in Algebra 2 because there are other numbers that we kind of came up with. But don't worry about it. Okay, so right now, I just want you to write down no real numbers. Is that okay? Are we good? Okay, so let's do some examples. So let's say that I have this, x squared is equal to negative 4. Okay, we got a perfect square equals to a negative real number. Is this possible?
No.
Is there such number on a number line that you could think of that when you multiply that number times itself, that it becomes negative? No. So guess what the solution is?
No solution.
No real solution. Okay. Yeah, whenever we say no solution, we really mean no real solution. Okay, but I want to emphasize no real solution for now because, like I said, when you go to Algebra 2, you will learn something called imaginary numbers and so forth. But don't worry about that now. Okay, so for now, just write down no real solutions when you get this. Is that okay? And of course, the reason is because I wrote this down. Just like Tajwar said, you cannot, even if we square root both sides, we get positive or negative square root negative 4. It's impossible to have square root of a negative number because, when you multiply the two same numbers, it can't be negative. It's impossible, right? They're either be both positive or both negative because they're the same number. Okay. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so on your homework tonight, do you think they're always going to give you x squared equals to some number and have you solve it? No, that'd be kind of boring. So they get a little bit creative. Not too much, but they just give you something like this. Here. 4x squared is equal to 9. Something like this. Now, does this fit the form that we've been talking about where you have a perfect square on the left side equals to a number? Real number? How many people say yes, it does fit the form? How many people say no, it doesn't? It's kind of not really because on the left side, 4x squared, you don't have something, you gotta have the whole thing squared. 4 isn't being squared, is it?
No.
So how can I make this so that you get a perfect square on the left side? There's a simple way to do this. Bella? Yeah, I could just divide both sides by 4. Then I just get x squared. Isn't that nice? So then if I divide both sides by 4, I simply get now x squared is equal to 9 over 4. And do I have a perfect square on the left side?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. You see? Okay. So then, do you know how to solve this? Chris, what should I do? Yeah, it's just square root both sides because this thing fits the pattern for this shortcut that we're learning, right? You got a perfect square equals to some real number. Does that make sense? Now, if this was 9 over 4x, is that a real number? Then can you take this shortcut? No, you can't. Okay. So it has to equal to some real number. You can't have x in here or something. Then you got to do something. You have to solve it different way. But if you have a perfect square equals to a number, it's really easy. All you have to do is, like Chris said, square root both sides. And don't forget to put positive or negative. And isn't 9 a perfect square? It's kind of nice because it's 3 squared. Isn't 4 a perfect square? So Claire, what do we get? On the left side, what is square root of x squared? That just becomes the square root and the squared a cancel out, so you just get x. And what's our solution? How many solutions do we get, by the way? 2. What are they?
Positive and negative 3 over 2.
Yes. So you get positive or negative 3 over 2. Should I leave it like this? I don't want you to leave it like this because people think that it's one number. How many numbers does it represent, really? 2. What are those 2 numbers? Negative 3 over 2 or positive 3 over 2. So you either x equals to negative positive 3 over 2 or negative 3 over 2. or you could write it in set notation. Okay, whichever. You should know how to do both ways. Okay, does this make sense? But on your homework, you could choose whichever way. But you should know how to do both. Easy enough?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see how they get a little bit more creative than this. Okay. Okay, take a look at this example 2. It's not that different than the one we did before, but you will see that the answer isn't going to be a rational number. Okay, go ahead. Everybody try this yourself. I'll wait. Okay, see what you get. You could help each other out, guys. Go ahead. So what do we do first? First, by the way, can I just take the square root both sides right now? No, because I have 25a squared. I don't have the whole left side being a perfect square, right? 25 isn't being square, is it? Just the a, right? So what do we need to do here first? Eugene, what should I do?
Divide both sides by 2.
Exactly. We need to divide both sides by 25, and it just simply becomes this. Isn't that nice? A squared is equal to 2. Now this time, 2 is not a perfect square. That's okay. We have a squared. The answer is going to be an irrational, right? You get the solutions actually. There are 2 solutions. The 2 solutions will be there will be an irrational number. So what do? Now we take. So do we have this form where we have a perfect square equals to a number? Could we take this shortcut? What do we do? Take the square root both sides, right? What do I get here when I do this? Carolyn?
You subtract 2.
No, I have a squared equals to 2. What do I do next to get a by itself? I need to take, yeah, it's square root both sides. What do I get?
A equals square root of rad 2.
Yeah, but don't forget to put,
Plus or minus.
yeah, because there's 2 solutions, right? When a perfect square equals to a number, right, you get 2 solutions. You guys remember that? So there are 2 solutions for this, and as you can see, the answers are negative rad 2 or positive rad 2. Does that make sense? There are 2 possible ways to be true. If you don't believe me, think about it. What is square root of 2 times square root of 2, guys? What is square root of 2 times square root of 2?
2.
That's 2 because you get square root of 4, which is square root of 2 squared, right? What about negative square root of 2 times negative square root of 2? What's negative times negative? Positive. What is rad 2 times rad 2 again? Square root of 2 squared, which is 2. You see how it works out?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay, there are 2 solutions. Whenever you have a perfect square equals to a number, you get 2 solutions, okay? And of course, the number has to be positive. Now, look at example 3. They got a little bit more creative than the ones we had. We got x minus 3, that binomial square equals to 100. Okay, so can I use the shortcut on this?
Yeah.
How many will say yes, I can? Raise your hand. How many will say no, you cannot? Okay, turns out you can because, look, x minus 3, the whole thing is being squared. Is that a perfect square?
Yes.
Yes, it is. And perfect square is equal to a number. We know we can use the shortcut. Can we not? Aaron, what should I do? Divide? We have a perfect square equals to a positive number, real number. So what do? We could take this shortcut. Yeah, we could just take square root both sides. Because if I take a square root of x minus 3 squared, what do you get? You just get x minus 3. Do you see? Do you guys see what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Guys, does that make sense? Oh, some of you are already doing it. Okay, well, hold on. So, okay, I'll give you time. Go ahead, everybody finish it up. I'll wait. How many of you took square root both sides? Did you all remember to put plus or minus?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, does the right side where the number is, does that have to be a perfect square every time? No. But the left side, well, the one with the variable has to be a perfect square, right? In order to take this shortcut. Does that make sense? This number, right? It could be any number, so as long as it's positive, right? If it's negative, we know it's no solution. Okay, so when we solve, how many people got x minus 3 equals to positive or negative 10? Very good. Now, how do I then solve for x in this case? What do I do next here to get x by itself? Because is this our answer?
No.
No? Chuck, what do I do?
Add 3.
Add 3 to both sides. Exactly right. And so we get, is this our answer then?
No.
X equals to 3, positive or negative 10. No, what does this mean, by the way? How many solutions would you get from this? 2. So what does this mean? Dana?
Oh, you get.
What does it mean? What does x equals to 3, positive or negative 10? What does that mean?
That you get 2.
Yeah, and what are the 2?
Oh, 13 negative 7.
How did you get that?
I split it into 2.
Yeah, it means this means what? 3 minus 10 or what? 3 plus 10. Isn't that what it means? Right? And don't we get two different answers? Yes? Okay, go ahead. Everybody finish it up. See what you get. What do you get when you do that? So how many people wrote this down like this? This really means x equals to 3 minus 10 or x equals to 3 plus 10, right? Did anybody think that it was like plus or minus 7 or plus or minus 13? Okay, don't do that. Okay, people, they see the plus or minus with 3. Yeah, they automatically think they either write plus or minus 7 or plus or minus 13. That's not what it means, does it? Okay, please, when you do that, it'll be wrong. Okay, so just don't do that. Because when you do this, what do you really get? You either get negative 7 or positive 13. You could write it this way or this way. Okay, but don't do this. This is wrong. Okay, you don't want to do that. Okay, for some reason, people just, without really separating them into two different, right, solutions, they just kind of look at the plus or minus and they do something weird. Okay, that's not what it means. It means 3 minus 10 or 3 plus 10. Does that make sense? Okay, that's why I wrote that down. All right. Is this easy? Do you understand? Okay, let's move on to the next one then. Okay, here as you can see, they get a little bit more creative than before. Okay, so we got 7 times quantity x plus a squared equals to negative 28. Okay, so what do we do? Okay, do I have the form that we like, where we have a perfect square equals to some number? No. Chuck, what do I need to do here?
Divide by 7.
That's right. So if you divide both sides by 7, okay, you get something simple like this. X plus 8 squared equals to negative 4. And of course, do we have a perfect square equals to some number?
No.
No.
No real solution.
Oh, okay, so but we do have a perfect square equals to some number, right? But this number happens to be negative. So we do have this form, but when you take square root both sides, it's impossible. So therefore, no real solution.
Wait, what? Oh, okay, I got it.
Okay? Yeah, you cannot have something being square equal to a negative number. It's impossible. So whenever you have a perfect square equals to some negative number, guess what? I told you, right? It equals to no. Yeah, the solution. There's no real solution. There's no number on a number line you can plug in, so that when you square it, it becomes negative. Does that make sense? Yes. All right. So you all understand why we get no real solution, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the example 5. Next example. All right. Now you see how they get a little bit more creative. You see they keep on adding things to this, but it's not that hard. Claire, what do you have to do to get this? So that you have a perfect square on the left side. Right now we don't have a perfect square, do we? So what are you going to do first?
Subtract 4
You're going to subtract 4?
or divide 6.
Okay, which one are you going to... So don't we want... Which one are you going to do first? By the way, if you subtract 4, it doesn't get rid of that 4 because it's already subtracting 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. Add 4.
Yeah, you want to add 4. Do you want to divide both sides by 6 though, first?
Yes.
Really? Because if you do, you're going to have to divide that 4 by 6 and you're going to get a fraction. So why not get rid of...
The
Yeah, 4. So by adding 4 first. Isn't that better? Then you get this, right?
Do
You
you
get...
have to follow PEMDAS?
But then when you're solving for one of the thing that you want, you gotta kind of do the opposite way, don't you? You could do that. That's only when you do simplifying, right?
Oh.
Or okay, so because if you divide both sides by 6 first, you get 4 over 6. You don't want to deal with fractions, do you?
No.
But you just add 4 and then what? Divide both sides by
Oh.
6. It's kind of like solving. You gotta undo it. It's kind of you have to do it the opposite order of PEMDAS or the order of operations. So then we get this, guys. X plus 9 squared is equal to 6, right? Do we have a perfect square equals to a number?
Yes.
No?
I mean,
Yeah, we got something squared. That's a perfect square, right? On the left side, it's just binomial. Equals to a number, don't we? Do we know how to then use a shortcut to solve? Okay, go ahead. Everybody try. I'll wait. Finish it up. Okay. All right, so when you square root both sides, this time it's kind of interesting because on the left side, what do we get here? How about Paige?
Oh, you got x plus 9.
Yes. On the right side, did you all put down positive or negative? Okay. What is positive negative square root of 6? What can you do with that?
Wait.
Can you do anything with that? No. You just leave it as it is. You can't do anything. Right? Because square root of 6 is a irrational number. You know, you can't really do much. It's not a perfect square, right? You don't have a square root of a perfect square, so you just leave it. Am I done? No. I need to do what, Matthew? Subtract 9 from both sides. By the way, you should write it this way first. You should put negative 9 positive or negative at 6. Don't write it this way, where you put 9 later, because If you do, then it looks like the 9 may be inside the radicand, inside the square root, right? So don't do it right. So you just write the regular number first, and you put the irrational. So don't write it this way. It may look like the 9 is inside the square root. Does that make sense? All right, so what does this mean? How many numbers does this represent? 2. What are these 2 numbers?
9 plus.
Okay, how about, let's see. Yes, one person knows? Okay, Jason, what do you think? Which 2 numbers does this represent? X equals 2?
Negative 9 plus frat 6.
Mm-hmm. And the other one is?
And then 9 minus frat 6.
Not 9. No, it's still negative 9, isn't it?
Oh, negative 9 minus frat 6.
Yeah, there are 2 numbers. It represents 2 numbers. Negative 9 minus frat 6, and then negative 9 plus frat 6. Does that make sense? This time the answer looks kind of weird because we haven't really seen this sort of number. But remember, these are some number, right? Frat 6 is between which 2 numbers, guys? 2 and 3. It's some number between 2 and 3. So you're subtracting those 2 numbers, right? It happens to be an irrational number. Does that make sense? So there are 2 solutions for this. You get negative 9 minus frat 6, or you get negative 9 plus frat 6. Do you understand what we're saying? Okay, do you get that? Do you see why I put negative 9 first? Okay, because you want to put the square roots at the end. All right, may I move on? All right. Now this time, example 6, they get really creative. Instead of them giving you something square, they give you a trinomial on the left side equals to some number. But take a look at this trinomial. Anybody see anything interesting about this trinomial? X squared minus 10x plus 25 equals to 16. What do you see? What do you notice about this trinomial? Yes, Aiden.
They're all perfect squares.
What do you mean by that?
No, 10.
Yeah, 10 is not perfect square. Yeah. 25, yeah, it is, but then 10. But look at that trinomial as a whole. That whole trinomial. Yes, Brianna. Say what? You could factor. What can you factor to? X minus 5 times x minus 5. You guys remember this trinomial is called a what kind of trinomial? When you have x minus 5 times the same thing, x minus 5. Perfect square trinomial. Turns out there are 2 ways of doing this. So yes, it does become a perfect square trinomial. And look at what we get. You see how they used to give us the binomial square? This time, what do they do? Instead of then giving us as a binomial square, what do they do here? Yeah, they just multiplied it out and gave us as a trinomial. But we know how to factor that, right? It just becomes x minus 5 squared equals to 16. Now, can we take that shortcut and figure it out? Go ahead, everybody try. Actually, I'll show you another method. Okay, go ahead, everybody try. I'll wait. Go ahead. Finish it up. So, did you guys all notice that you got a perfect square equals to some number, right? Square root both sides. Did you all remember to put positive or negative on the right side where the number was? What is square root of 16, by the way? 4. So you get positive or minus, positive or negative 4.
Oh, you're right.
Right? And then, of course, the square root and the square cancel out. You just get x minus 5 on the left side. Right? So what do? We add
5.
Add 5. Angel, what are the 2 solutions we get here?
X equals 1 or 9.
Yeah, you get x equals 1 or 9 because this means x equals to 5 minus 4 or x equals to what? 5 plus 4. Then we get 2 solutions like this. Right? X equals to 1 or 9. Does that make sense? I said that there was another method of doing this. So let's go back up and see how we do it another way. Okay. By the way, if we do it another way, what should your answer be? Still the same, of course, right? Okay, let's see how to do it the other way. Okay, and it's called solve by factoring. And you know what? On your homework tonight, it's going to ask you to do that. Not only will they ask you to solve right using the shortcut, they're going to ask you to solve by factoring. So whenever you do have a trinomial, well, whenever you have an equation that is not linear, we're going to make sure it equals to what first? 0. So this is the algebraic method that we've been learning. So how do I make this equal to 0? Subtract both sides by 16. And don't we get this trinomial? X squared minus 10x plus 9 equals to 0. Now, do you know how to solve this equation? We've done this before. What do we do with this trinomial on the left side? Since it equals to 0, we want to We want to do what? Factor. Go ahead, everybody try. Factor and see if we get the same answer. Oh wait, everybody try. So, how many people got this factor on the left side? Who knows how to factor that trinomial? Chuck?
It's x minus 1 and x minus 9.
That's right. And it's easy because it's the coefficient, the leading coefficient is 1, right? It's 1x squared. So, this is only true when what? X minus 9 equals 0 or x minus 10 equals 0. Remember zero product property? Yes?
Yeah.
So what are the two solutions you get?
1 and 9.
Yeah, you get 1 and 9. Isn't that what we had before? Yeah, we get the same answer. Any question? Let's do one last one. This is really quick. Okay. All right. Last question. It says solve by factoring, and they give you this. Now, this time, can you square root both sides or anything like that? And can you make it equal to a perfect square equal to some number? No. So that's why it says solve by factoring, not using that shortcut. So to do that, well, every time you solve, right, an equation that is not linear, you gotta make it equal to what first? You gotta make it equal to 0. So subtract both sides by 512x. Then look at the left side. What do we do with this left side? We have to be able to factor. No, you gotta, yes. Greatest common factor. Remember, easiest way to factor is GCF. This one has GCF of 8x. 8x times x squared minus 64. Isn't that what we get? Because 8 times 64 is 512. All right. Now look at the x squared minus 64. Do you know how to factor that?
Yes.
It's a difference of square. I'll tell you what's that equal to?
It's x plus 8, x minus 8.
That's right. Now, then how many solutions would you get in this? This is not even a quadratic. It's like cubic equation, isn't it? It's x to the third power. How many solutions do you get? There are 3 factors that equal to 0, right? So how many solutions are you going to get? 3. When would 8x be 0?
When x equals 0.
Okay, hold on. Yeah. Guys, this is true if, hold on, we're not done. Give me a sec. 8x equals 0, x minus 8 equals 0, or what? X plus 8 equals 0. How many solutions do you get? 3. Negative 8, 0, and 8. Does that make sense? Have a good day, guys.